How's it going, everyone? It is Zimcast number 97. Some might say almost the lost Zimcast, the missed Zimcast. As like the last day I was planning to do this stream, something work related came up, and I'm still doing the stream. It's just probably going to be, if not the most short, like the most shortest Zimcast that I've ever done. But to acknowledge the people who did say something when it was premiering originally, God Goji 1993 first, with Minecraft World coming in second. Sam technically saying hi, but being third, making Antonio be fourth there, technically. And it just shows everyone else's comments still to me. So that's fun. I love that when that happens. And unfortunately, with StreamYard, you need like the double confirmation if you want to change something. And Facebook's weird, where if you're so close to a event happening, it won't let you change the time. You have to remove Facebook from one of your multi streams and then add it back in. So that's fun. Facebook being the boomer type of website that it is. And once again, hello Minecraft, hello Antonio, hello Sea Monster, and Country Shape Media asking, what does Zeitgeist mean anyway? So Zeitgeist refers to sort of the common consciousness, common ideas that are in the minds of general people, like in a particular time and place. So the zeitgeist of the 80s, the 90s is going to be different from the zeitgeist of the 2000s and even the 2000s themselves, like the mid, early, and now later aughts, all have different cultural zeitgeists to them. I think for many people, the best thing you can compare it to is memes. Like if you see certain memes that are common now versus memes that were common then, it is because those memes are a part of a certain zeitgeist and a particular kind of humor, ideas, brands, etc. So that is the best way to describe zeitgeist. And then what do I mean by when a Godzilla film is in the zeitgeist? Well, there's usually only like one Godzilla film, or maybe like one is really close to the other, but it's coming into the next year, that is in the zeitgeist due to the fact that obviously these films are pretty annual. So the topic of like what Godzilla films are being talked about will generally shift and move between those time periods. But of course, now with the internet, you're able to look back on things a lot like wider in terms of how much content it is you can consume. Films tend to stay longer in the zeitgeist because of the easy access we have to them. And in many cases, some Godzilla films sort of fall out of the zeitgeist. And I think to some degree, zeitgeist also has to do with whether it's popular or not. So popular culture ties into what people think of when they think zeitgeist. But I would say that every Godzilla film is in the zeitgeist and that people in the community talk about them, but in the grander scheme of just general film discussion, which I think this video is more aptly describing, many Godzilla films do kind of fall through the cracks. Cascade, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? How's it going? But without further delay, because like I said, this is going to probably be a very, very short Zimcast. I'm going to bring the people who I have on in the back right now. Those are the Minecraft World. How's it going?
Heyo.
And Hoshi, how's it going?
Good midnight, amigos.
Good midnight indeed. And as he connects here, device is not connected. But when he's able to join, I will introduce him. Nope, there he is. Finally, right when I say I'll join him later, his device decides, I will finally do it. It is Lau. How's it going?
Hi guys. Hi, it's
What's
great.
up?
How are you?
Living.
I'm doing okay.
And another one in here as well. It is the Sea Monster, my favorite seaman.
Yo.
But yeah, it's been crazy outside of obviously coming back from G-Fest and all that. I'll probably next stream will be a G-Fest sort of recap in terms of my thoughts about that.
How did the Cottom screening go? That's what I'm most curious about.
I would say it wasn't as crazy as the GXK screening, but there was still like a lot of riffs and stuff people did throughout it. So I would say it was less crazy than the first Cottom screening or the GXK screening, but still it was more lively, I'd say, than any of the other screenings.
Yeah. I've seen clips of the Destroya screening on my Instagram, and that one seemed incredibly lively.
That one's probably the second liveliest. And then I'd
I've
say,
been into none of the screenings because I don't live there. So yeah.
I'd probably say that the Mega Garish screening was the least lively. But in all honesty, like having watched it again after, I think, because I think I remember the last time I did watch it was at a different G Fest. I kind of actually liked it a little bit more than I have. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe Mega Garish might end up becoming one of my more favorite films. So we'll see. We'll see.
Neat.
Ooh.
But just jump right into the video now. Yeah.
Just a heads up, so I think I mentioned to you like on the DMs, but if I happen to drop out like at some point, it's because I have like a phone call coming up, so I'll have to like, but I'll try to get back in, if it doesn't take too long.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem.
But before we
Okay.
begin, I sent something on stream submission, so you guys can check it out.
Let's see. We'll probably
Yeah,
save it for the next stream only because I am on a tight time schedule tonight.
All right.
Oh yeah, fair.
Yeah.
One sec. Suko and Scar King. Yeah. For me, I've been slowly getting my cousin into Godzilla.
There you go.
And how's it going?
Yeah, I showed her Godzilla versus Biollante. She seemed semi-interested.
Semi-interested. Good. Yes, good.
Yeah.
For
Thing
me,
is, I
my
already
dad
showed her
had-
G2. Thing is, I already showed her G2K, and she really enjoyed that one.
As for
There
me,
you
I
go.
finally started to watch the Jaws movies.
Oh, there you go. Nice. One sec. I also just realized the StreamYard had a new layout, so all their buttons are different.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at that, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah, it's like that was the first thing that I noticed when pulling it on. It's like, oh, you guys have been reformatting.
Yeah, it is literally it's been some time. So I was like, wait, what? As I'm trying to set up this stream again. So yeah, I think I did it without the audio. I'm like a boomer now. Every time I leave and I don't stream for a little, I'm like, how does this work? Okay, I'm just gonna play it again, just a real second. Once I stop, let everyone ask me if the audio's good.
No one talks about this Godzilla movie.
Does that sound good?
Maybe
Yeah,
a
to
little
me,
louder.
it sounds fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like the people on YouTube, can they hear like the same
Also,
quality? I guess.
well, I'm currently following on Twitch if you want to know.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, I have things to say about Zeitgeist and things like that later.
Do you want to say them now as like a preemptive kind of thing, or
no,
wait?
because it's more so related to like the general thesis and conclusion. At least I'd assume such.
Of the video? Okay.
Yeah, and just the topic of the stream overall.
Alrighty, let's begin.
Cool.
And no, I'm not talking about this one, or the 2014 reboot of Godzilla, or even the 1998 Godzilla. The Godzilla film I'm talking about was a Japanese wide release, and no, it's not the original Godzilla. In fact, it just came out in 2016. It's Shin Godzilla, and it's bonkers. Now, I've watched my favorite.
So I was gonna say, I don't think Shin was considered a wide release, at least in America. I know it obviously had its wide release in Japan, but I think it had really limited screenings in America.
Also,
So
back in the
that
day,
was-
it was called Godzilla Resurgence.
yeah,
Yeah, it also got to Latin America and some parts of Mexico, I think, but it was always like limited. So
It was
Yeah.
really limited. I think it's because Toho themselves didn't distribute it, and was it Funimation that distributed?
yeah, it was Funimation.
Yeah, it was. Cinemassacre talked
Yeah,
about it.
we're definitely not talking -1 levels of distribution in the US.
Oh yeah,
or
no,
for
that
America.
was a full campaign push for that film.
I'm actually even trying to remember. Did Toho even do like a Shin Godzilla trailer like they did with
did.
-1?
I think they
Yeah.
did.
They did a teaser.
I think because I remember.
Because
Yeah.
I remember obviously seeing the trailer. I just don't remember like.
Yeah. I remember most of my interactions with the trailers was like D-Man talking about them and then watching them after the fact.
Yeah. Because at least actually, let's do it like this. Because I'm just looking in like another tab. Let's do my oldest. Because I literally never remember like really seeing a Shin Godzilla trailer pushed and only knowing about it because of other channels talking about it.
Yeah. I remember the thing didn't even release in my state when it first dropped. I remember I watched it on a plane about a year after its release.
Oh, you got to see it on a plane. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then I found it again at a local library, and I also found it on one of the sites that we use. So I might give it a watch again before we get to that inevitable Shin Godzilla debate.
As well as the fact that it's getting a re-release again this year.
Oh yeah, the 4K is coming.
Yeah.
By the way, you go first.
Okay. I think Shin Godzilla was released at least in my home state for as limited as it was, but obviously I didn't really. I mean, there was a couple reasons why I didn't get around to seeing it because, one, because I wasn't even that interested in the movie in the first place. But second of all, I was kind of in college, so so there was that.
As for me, I watched Shin Godzilla in my house. I didn't watch it in theaters because they weren't adding any Godzilla movies from Japan because my country just watches movies from America.
At the time, I was in Estonia and it wasn't there anywhere. And the thing is, I did make a little research, and it turns out that it was like in a lot of countries in Latin America. Still limited, but like way more than just Mexico. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I was in 5th grade when that film released. Yeah, no, I was. I remember being like borderline obsessed with the thing, even like learning the theme in my piano class.
Oh yeah, same thing, dude. I remember when I watched it.
No, it wasn't Who Will Know. It was Persecution of the
Persecution
Masses.
of the Masses.
That
was my next guess.
That one's really good.
Yeah.
I remember I watched it and I showed it to my
soundtrack.
brothers, in the home that I was staying at, and they were like asleep. After the atomic breath scene, that was like the last point where they were interested.
Yeah.
So,
I remember the build-up for Shin Godzilla, I think, is my fondest memory, just of becoming a Godzilla fan. Just because, like, oh, I was becoming a fan right as this new movie was releasing. Let's see what's going on with that. And, yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, like the design reveal, it was so fucking painfully slow, but it was awesome. Yeah. It's weird, like thinking about it. There was a point where we really didn't know how it looked.
I remember back in the day, I watched people like D-Man 1954 and Goji Fan 93 religiously. Hell, I still watch the latter. So.
Yeah, no, I think I was still a teenager too when this came out. So I was like in high school. Like I think this first half of high school. So I was pretty obsessed with this too.
As for me, I watched it when I was around in my 8th grade or 6th grade when this came out.
Fair share of Godzilla movies. In fact, my son recently got really into the Godzilla franchise, and so we've watched a few of the Japanese ones together, including 2023's -1, which made a big splash here in the States. And I enjoyed that film. It's a much more gritty and dramatic film, but personally, I like my Godzilla films when they're having a little bit more fun with themselves. In fact, I actually...
Should we be funphobic about this? I think that we should be extremely funphobic.
No,
all I wanted to say is... you guys go first.
Yeah, because the Heisei films are pretty fun, but they're still serious. The Millennium Era is the Millennium Era. Hell, the early Showa films. So, like, really, it just depends on which one he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for me, I don't think he's doing this intentionally or at least in a malicious way, but I think anytime I hear someone say, at least from my perspective, that I like my Godzilla movies when they're fun, I think what they mean to say, or like what is kind of implied, is that I like my Godzilla movies when they aren't trying to be serious.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if he was a little more. It'd be nice if he was a little more specific about what kind of what Godzilla movies he was referring to, so we have like a little bit of a basis of what he means.
Like, even if he just mentioned like vague descriptions, like I don't know, the plant monster, the Power Ranger, the sludge beast, or whatever it is.
Yeah, because like to me, when he says fun, it's like, and you're describing Shin as fun, like Shin. Of all the Godzilla movies, Shin is the fun one.
I think
I get it for the first half.
He didn't call it fun. He called it bonkers.
Yeah, but then at that point, it's just sort of like you're using a bunch of different adjectives to sort of beat around the bush about what the like intent of the statement really is.
To
I think.
me, if the
Just
type
figured
of
I'd play
movies
devil's
he was
advocate.
referring to was the movies that were both exciting and just, you know, interesting and entertaining for kids to watch, whereas Minus One is a more movie that's far more deeper and more, you know, the type of movie that's more into exploring deeper messages.
Well, like
I
then I would say
think
like
The
that's a
minus
weird
one is
argument
so
because I'd say like
fun.
Jurassic Park similarly tackles deep messages and doesn't take itself overly silly. It takes itself rather serious. So like,
what I think he's trying to say might be that minus one is more like a drama, and instead of that sheen, it's more impersonal, so you don't feel that bad throughout the movie for the
mhm.
characters.
But
Maybe that's what he means.
I think
Fun as a lack
also,
of tragedy.
well,
Maybe.
going back, what he says is
gritty and dramatic film, but personally, I like my Godzilla films when they're having a little bit more fun with themselves. In fact, I actually quite liked Godzilla X Kong.
yeah. So that's the thing is that he's more
Uh,
referring to stuff like this.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's
There it is.
the other thing. Is like I was like I think when he thinks Godzilla, he likes Godzilla movies that are fun. It's things like GXK, Megalon, stuff like that.
I just want
Man.
to know what movies he showed his son. I'm curious.
Probably whatever is like easily
I
accessible.
guarantee you, I guarantee you, he would have been including Godzilla vs Megalon because the infamous scene.
How accessible is Godzilla versus Megalon currently?
I don't think
If
it's
he-
accessible to be fair. Like,
It's kind of accessible, depending on like
I mean-
where you're buying it from.
Because like that's the question that I have in mind. If he's
you
going to
mean
show him
accessible?
Godzilla,
Okay.
if he's going to show him Godzilla versus Megalon, like how accessible is it?
I thought you meant accessible as in how easy it is to get into that type of
No,
movie.
how easy is it to find? Because like
Okay. First
like,
of all,
I
you
have
go
a
to
site-
torrents. You
Yeah,
go
'cause
to I think it's YFS, and then you download it with Qubit torrent. Super easy, barely inconvenience.
Even then, even then, it depends on what streaming service you can even find this stuff. Like, it could be like HBO Max or Amazon Prime or anything
Doesn't
like that.
Pluto
Or
TV
hell, even
have
Tubi.
Yeah,
all
Pluto
of the
TV
Godzilla
has them
movies?
too. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Didn't Tubi add a couple Godzilla movies on there? I know GMK was on there.
Tubi had a
A
few. Yeah.
couple, but to be fair, I think they tried to add the best ones. I don't know if Megalon will qualify in that regard.
Honestly, if Tubi throws in Godzilla versus Megalon, I wouldn't be surprised.
Also, remember
It will be
sometimes
based.
they will appear on YouTube for free as well.
True.
But
That's also
since
true.
Yeah.
since we brought up Tubi, let me do some let me see if Tubi has it.
Like, I remember I downloaded basically every single movie on torrent, like a couple of times, because every so many years I do like a marathon.
If he has the Criterion collection, then that'd be very surprising.
Well, he said
Well,
he
it should
just
be-
recently got into Godzilla, so it's pretty doubtful he has the Criterion
No,
collection.
like if he somehow got his hands on that thing early on, I'd be very surprised.
Mhm.
And proud of
Yeah,
him.
like I don't know if he
Proud
will like
of him,
pay
but also
that much.
surprised.
Yeah. It's too much of an investment for someone that's
Yeah,
not
no.
super into it.
Yeah, no,
Well, this is funny because let me stop sharing this because I want to share what I found on Tubi because this is actually funny. Share screen.
Imagine it's like
There we go.
Godzilla's Revenge.
No, look. So ready. Search result. Godzilla. First thing comes up. Jurassic World. The Lake. Gamera the Brave. Dino King. Ape vs Monster. The Thing.
A
RoboCop.
versus monster.
The Terminator
Let's not
2
forget
Judgment
about
Day.
Colossal.
Fate of the Furious?
Yes. Gorgo. Camera 2.
Sharknado!
We said Gamma.
Not Zilla.
Gamer Creeper! Son of God!
No, but ready. I haven't found a single Godzilla movie yet, but they have Atragon right
They
there.
even have a
That's
dog movie.
What?
They have a dog movie.
Imagine if they had 98 and that's
They
the
have
only
Chris
one.
Moore
Oh my
Time.
God.
That's all
What
you
does
get.
Labyrinth have to do with Godzilla? Or God's not
They have
dead?
Parker in there.
Pac-Man.
They have Mr. Bean right there.
They have every single
Terrifier.
monster they have everything that was.
Terrifier.
They have every single kaiju movie except for
got
Godzilla itself.
They
Yeah.
got Bulk. The amazing Bulk.
Wait, where was it?
Wait.
Where is it?
Where?
The basic bulk. You have to shoot them.
They're
No.
down.
You're
Down.
kidding.
You need to go
Down.
down.
They have Zillafoot.
They have
Zillafoot.
All the Terrifiers too.
Yeah.
The Transformers. It's on here.
The unofficial Fortnite skit.
Oh my god.
Titanic too.
2.
Titanic Creations.
Oh,
Apocalypto.
Do you have a
Nicolas
horse there?
Cage on that, which
No,
Oh my God.
Transmutators.
no!
Mr. Bean.
Okay, I know where I'm going if I want to do an Asylum binge.
Yeah, let me see.
By that I mean
Godzilla
Portrait
versus
myself.
Megalon. See what? But they have all three of the Gamera movies. Now there they go.
I'm
I'm
going
gonna
with
put in a specific film. It's not even the right film.
Space Godzilla, Final Wars against
Wars.
Mechagodzilla 2 versus Destroyer, Megaguirus, GMK,
Aquaman.
Aquaman,
Mothra.
Mothra. Okay, that's nice.
All right, we're.
I still love the fact that like out of all the films they have Atragon. Like I love Atragon.
That is like no. If they had Gorath, actually, wait, no. I'm curious. Do they have Gorath? I am curious now.
Super
please,
Monster.
please.
Do they have
please
the
tell me they have Gorath.
Mysterious?
Ooh, they have Mega Monster Battle. That's crazy.
Ooh. I think actually, wait, no. I think they have pretty much every Ultraman. At least I think they did. Please tell me they have Gorath. I'm curious.
And then I just want to know
Oh, they have
if
Battle in
have
Outer
War.
Space.
Oh my god.
Do they
They
have
have
War of the
Diamond.
Gargantuas?
Yes, I know for a fact they have War of the Gargantuas.
Well, let's see if they still
Really?
do.
Oh, okay. If they do, I will like get it
We need a pink
right
one
now.
right now.
I know for a fact they have War of the Gargantuas.
Nope, not coming up.
Oh,
Damn it!
suicide is painless. It
Oh,
brings
no.
so many changes.
in the chat. Hi, Joey.
Is the Joey?
No.
Get on here.
I,
But like, yeah, no, Tubi's good.
And I enjoyed that film. It's a much more pretty and dramatic film. Personally, I like my Godzilla films when they're having a little bit more fun with themselves. In fact, I actually quite liked Godzilla X Kong that came out last year. I thought it was bombastic and wild, albeit a bit hollow and lacking in some places. Shin Godzilla, though, this is a wild movie. It checks all the boxes. 10 to 20 years from now, Shin Godzilla will be the cult classic of the Godzilla franchise. Okay, let's get into the details here.
Oh, no. No. Sorry.
who's gonna tell him?
I think like honestly, it still probably will be remembered. Still, like I think even regardless of what a lot of people say,
it definitely will be remembered if anything.
It
But
will
like,
be.
a part of me feels like -1 kind of knocked it out of the spotlight permanently.
yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that was because -1 was just significantly more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I
good.
did have to say that
mean,
And
Shin
quality
is
doesn't matter, the
doesn't
Monsterverse,
have
but-
more forms and doesn't.
I mean, quality doesn't matter, the
tail.
Like, see,
yeah,
quality
yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
matter.
Like it's so unique. Like
Yeah.
even if you don't like it, it's so unique. It is kind of like a classic.
Well,
Yeah.
also not to mention the fact that it was the
Also-
first Godzilla film in Japan since Final Wars 2.
It's also,
also-
in a way a direct. It's also in a way, as Joey would say, a near direct translation of 54.
Which I disagree
And-
with, but
I
And also
disagree
it
with
has
so
the cultural.
Well,
It also has
maybe
the
not
cultural wave of
maybe
Evangelion.
not exactly, but like a lot of aspects it draws from 54, which
that's needs to be shaped for the Shin debate. But
yeah, we'll save that for Shin.
yeah,
Yeah.
I still stand with Kuru. I still stand with Kuru and C on Shin Godzilla personally, but yeah.
And also, it does have that like almost documentary thing to it, feel.
Yeah.
So again, like I do think that this is so unique from the others that
Like,
it will definitely be like a classic,
way,
but it will be kind of
in a way,
divisive.
Shin kind of. I think part of that was also because the MonsterVerse went back a little bit more traditionally. Like G14 was, in a lot of ways, incredibly traditional with how it approached Godzilla. I'd say it mirrored G2K in a lot of ways, and Shin had to build off of that, and also try to be its own thing. So it went the way that it did. Was it successful? We'll talk about that another day, but still.
yeah. Like And as well as another thing too, it was like the first, like it had been a Godzilla film that actually got like a Best Picture award. It replaced the Heisei Godzilla statue. I think in Hibiya Park, I believe.
Which
I know it's I forget
still
which park it
blows
is.
my mind to this day, considering Heisei Godzilla was the most iconic version of the character.
Exactly, yeah.
It still is one of the
Yeah.
poster children designs.
Mhm.
And Shin,
Like Shin
yeah,
won an Oscar of that.
and not only that, like Shin is still like a big thing because of again Evangelion and all of the
Yeah.
directors. I forgot his
Yeah,
name.
you have the guy
Hideaki Anno.
behind
Yeah,
Evangelion and the
Hideaki Anno.
special effects head behind Attack on Titan and the Gamera films.
Yeah,
So
but like the thing is, most people won't get to know that, but the Hideaki Anno thing, like, definitely will be like a huge
yeah,
thing. And even to
Mhm.
this day, when you go to this attraction where you are like on that line and you go into Godzilla's mouth, I don't know how you say that in English, but that one's still
The
Shin
zip
Godzilla.
line.
Like,
the zip
yeah,
line.
the
Yeah,
zip line.
yeah.
I don't think they will ever change that. For example.
No,
That's
I like that's the one thing is that like with I think with big attractions like that they're not good at, but I believe that there was so much hubbub around Shin that is still more accessible in Japan than it is America. Not to mention it's
Yeah,
still getting a lot of things like those pachinko games that feature Evangelion. And although like the Shin Japan Heroes universe has kind of faded away, there's still a big wave of Shin Godzilla related things. Like in like those big sort of like multi monster like gashapon boxes and things of that nature, you
yeah.
still get a lot
Shin-
of Shin Godzilla being one of the Godzillas they'll feature, like
I think the
alongside
yeah,
54,
I
Heisei,
think
and
the
Minus.
crazy thing. I think the crazy thing for Shin is like the fact that it took less than a decade for it to be topped. I think that's what surprises me the most because it's like if you were in 2016 or 2017 even, Shin's popularity was absolutely insane. In fact, like I
yeah.
think Shin's popularity is what contributed a lot of the hype for the Polygon films.
Yeah,
Um,
For everything, even in single point, and I
yeah.
would even say something as like separate as Man in the Suit.
Oh yeah, definitely. But it's like back in 2016, you would have never imagined that. Considering Shin Godzilla surpassed Heisei after how long was it? 2 decades.
Yeah,
It's like how is this going to be topped? -1 drops.
Yeah, the popularity of Shin. I'll just be a little transparent here. The popularity of Shin back in that day was kind of like what made me so much more frustrated towards the film because like really guys, you guys are saying that this is like the best. This is the best Godzilla movie that's come out in years. This piece of shit.
well, I think too another thing is that Minus was able to beat out Shin not just because of the fact that it was more wildly accessible, and I had this thought for the moment we saw Shin's design. I knew if they were ever going to do another live action Godzilla film, Shin's design and like how it works as a character does not allow itself or it does not lean itself well into carrying a franchise. Like it's very good as a one-off Godzilla in its own story, doing its
I
own
mean,
thing.
for
But with
crying out loud,
Minus, nah.
for crying out loud, this thing is basically a zombie. It has no personality, no will of its own.
yeah. It has no motivation in the movie itself. Like we don't understand. Like for example, if it needs to cool down, then why the hell does it go on land at all? No
Yeah,
one says it. But
Like,
yeah, and also
like
like -1 had a main character,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
that's
Well,
like a
like, well, I'd say
huge like
Minus.
thing
I
there.
think they both have main characters, but Koichi's just a way more
Shin
compelling
technically does
character.
have a main
Yeah,
I mean,
character.
Yaguchi's just not as compelling a
that's the
character.
thing. Shin technically has a main character, but no
Guys,
one like
hey
a
guys,
lot of people
I have
talk
some
about the lack
unfortunate
of.
news. I'm going to be leaving soon. Okay,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Okay.
All right.
Ah,
Bye.
yeah.
No, it's no
Well,
problem. We
you
know how
don't.
it is.
Yeah, we know.
Oh, well, that was
He just
fast.
he bounced. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
He had to go. You know, like it was the time. It was right now or
it was
never.
like it's like Jurassic Park. What do you gotta go? You gotta go.
yeah. I mean, he
He
said it was
changed his
midnight, right?
wings.
He did say it was
And then
midnight, right?
flights
Literally.
back to
For
Warrior
that,
Decade
so
Yeah,
Noir.
yeah, yeah. For him, it's like past midnight by now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
fair. Yeah, but
Joe Smo, what's up?
yeah, no, I like. Granted, I -1 surpassed Shin, probably likely for an obvious reason, just because it was more accessible. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like it's more recognizable too. Like
Yeah.
like Minus has definitely done more to like set the stage in terms of like a Godzilla that you can morph into other formats. Like you can do a
Mhm.
chibi Minus, you can do regular Minus, things of that
Yeah.
nature. And
The
I think
fact
like
that the fact that multiple different figure companies have successfully been able to translate the design perfectly, whereas Shin barely has a good figure, says a
no,
lot.
Yeah.
Shin's got good figures. Like if it was like,
I mean,
or even on like a
like
base
one or
level.
two at most. But like the thing is, they're super expensive because the design is so complex.
Well,
Like
no,
for
no, no.
example,
I'm
SH
not even
Monster
saying that. Like I'm talking about like for example like the Bandai Shin
Bandai.
versus the Bandai Minus. Both of those are like pretty good figures for what they
Oh,
are. Is like standard.
yeah. You know what? Yeah, some shins from Bandai are actually kind of
Yeah,
nice to
fair.
the point where I
I
almost would consider getting one. But
yeah,
like
fair.
Mhm.
still, like
I'm
they never really
but
get there in detail or
yeah,
paint.
so but still, -1 also has its iconography very much akin to the Heisei design, and the film itself is
Yeah.
very Heisei-esque if you actually stop and think about it.
The film itself, in terms of its pacing and its writing,
Yes,
or
yes. In terms of
uh,
I would make the case. At
I would
least
say honestly, I would like Minus is closer to like a 54 mixed with some Heisei
Yeah.
elements.
yeah, but like didn't Heisei draw a lot from 54 tonally, at least in its first few entries?
In its first few
I mean,
entries, but like
but
as
a
a
lot of
whole, like
Godzilla
Like
movies have
yeah,
done
like
that.
exactly.
it's like -1 got me think -1 in particular. I kept also thinking back to Return of Godzilla in particular, just because
Mhm.
like how it's done. And of course, the design itself speaks very much to the Heisei. We talked about the design a few streams ago, but still,
Yeah.
um,
I mean, maybe what they took from Heisei besides the design itself is like the fact that it's evil-ish. Like that's the thing.
I wouldn't
It's straight
even
up
say
evil in
that.
-1, and
Like,
Heisei is more like just an animal, like anti-hero at most. So I don't even really think that you can say
I
that
wouldn't,
the Godzilla
I wouldn't
behavior
even
is
fully call
Heisei.
Minus evil. I just, I wouldn't even call Minus evil. I'd call it vengeful. Evil is something like GMK or Ultima.
Yeah. Well, I would say like -1 is definitely like an antagonist, but also
Yeah,
well, actually, no, I would say
antagonistic.
it is kind of he's more kind of on the evil side because
Yeah,
it isn't really like in this case Japan's not the one that dropped the bombs on it. So it's going on it's lashing out at like any and everyone and then decides specifically to make landfall in Japan. So at least from an
Yeah,
in-universe standpoint, not a thematic aspect, he is pretty evil.
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
he's even like actively targeting like whole crowds of people that are trying to run away from him. Like not just
Mhm.
stepping on
Yeah,
them, but even like doing a tail swipe at them. Like it's pretty malicious.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
even
yeah.
in
He's
the
straight up
or
evil.
or like in like the new 70-year Godzilla book, they mention or Yamazaki mentions that he wanted Godzilla to essentially be like an angry god that the characters have to essentially placate in order to like stem his wrath. And from that aspect, I would say in like most ideas of morality, that would make him an evil god in a sense.
I kind
But
of, I kind of disagree with that because it's more so, it's evil in a very similar way to something like 54, where it's like, yes, he does
you're
destroy, yes, he
roboting.
it's evil in the same way that 54 was, where yes, it's actively destructive, but it's also vengeful. It's not Godzilla himself wouldn't be able to pinpoint exactly who or what hurt him, and so he's going after everything that's nearby. Also, they
Well,
state in the
no, because
film
Yamazaki state that Godzilla does have a understanding as to what like it was humans that did this to him, but the humans that he's lashing out at aren't specifically the humans or like the total like the group that is specifically responsible for his direct mutation.
yeah, yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Joey actually puts it pretty well. It's not evil as much as it is divine punishment.
Outside of
Well,
divine punishment, outside of divine being spelled wrong, like if something like when well, you'd have to break down what you mean by divine punishment, like divine being just heavenly or godly, but then
I'd say
Because
divine
if a
in
god
quote.
starts
I'd say
punishing people, I
divine
think
in
that's kind of an
quotes.
evil god.
yeah, like
I mean,
if you're using the term divine in this context, you would
I-
then have to attribute
I
it to
use
some
the
sort of
term
god or
divine-
higher power.
I use the term divine in quotes. It's more akin to, well, I mean, it could be applicable considering Godzilla himself is a figment of mythology and is worshipped as a god canonically. But
I mean, if there's like shades of good and evil and all that, like Godzilla -1 would fit into some shade of evil, if not like like he
Yeah,
would like
he's
I definitely
definitely
wouldn't
on
say
the
he's
dark-
Lucifer.
he's
Hold on, I
certainly-
wouldn't. Hold on. I wouldn't call him Lucifer levels of evil, but there is like
yeah, that's not,
there's some there
that's not-
he
that's what I'm
fits
saying.
in somewhere in that general area where he's like. Yeah, like he's like where his vengeance is like really just it's like he's like it's on his mind like
Yeah, like
like
Godzilla.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say
That's
I
what
would
I'm
say Godzilla
saying.
is like an elemental form of evil, but it's still an evil of some kind.
Yeah, like
which would-
he's not GMK levels of evil, but he's almost there. And the only reason why he's not really there is because we don't have like official confirmation that he's literally a vengeful spirit.
Yeah,
The
no,
same way
all he
GMK
really-
is, but
all
his
he
behavior
really
is very
is,
the same.
like, all he really is a being that is is an animal that is worshipped as a god that was hurt by humans and is now seeking retribution.
and even
Yeah,
then
but,
like GMK,
even then, like if we were to say that Godzilla is just an animal, it's an animal that has a level of cognition that allows it to understand the concept of taking revenge and evening out the score to some degree. And considering the actions that -1 enacts against the people he enacts it on, it would be considered evil in most like morality systems. The same would apply to 54. And like
It's
for
a funny
example,
way to, yeah.
like even like with
going.
GMK, the reason why GMK rose from the dead in the first place is because of the spirits of those that died in the Pacific Theater being angry at the Japanese for forgetting the atrocities that they committed. That motive in and of itself, in terms of like doing something to doing something to combat that like growing listlessness, I would say is a quote unquote good. But then deciding, you know what, I'm going to genocide this entire country because they've forgotten the atrocities that their ancestors have committed is what makes GMK an evil monster.
yeah.
Like, or even the Guardian monsters. They say that the Guardian monsters aren't trying to defend Japan, the Japanese people, but defending Japan, the country, which is interesting. It would still make, even if they're not defending the people, they're still defending at least a concept of what Japan is as a nation. And in doing so, it does still save innocent lives, which would still make the Guardian monsters, even if they are more framed as less than like pure good, are still more good than Godzilla.
Yeah, I mean the fact that Ghidorah even goes out of his
Joey,
way
what's
to
up?
save Yuri and the other guy, like the fact that he does that, after the when they're falling to their deaths, it's the fact that he saves them just kind of shows like, all right, Ghidorah does, there is like he's not explicit. It's not all just like protecting the land. It's just the protecting the land is like the main thing. The people of Japan are just part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Mhm.
that's something that I really like about Kaneko's style with kaiju movies. And I think if we ever do talk about GMK in some way, I'd like to bring that up.
Mhm.
Like, just what makes Kaneko's style work.
It follows a wounded Godzilla as he crawls out from Tokyo Bay and across the entire city, leaving a wake of destruction in its path, only to disappear again. Scientists discover that Godzilla is regenerating and is going to return twice his size, and so now the whole of Japan must prepare for Godzilla's return. The film's budget, translated to USD, was somewhere around 50.
I was gonna say real quick, not again. I always hate actualing things like that, but like Godzilla wasn't wounded. Godzilla was just like in his mutation. That's just sort of how he was in a sense.
He mutated from an underwater life form that and which is why when he's like bleeding from the gills, it's like okay, like he's like kind of like even if it's not explicit, there is like the fact that he's bleeding from the gills, you could at least say like he's not used to being on land,
Yeah.
like when he starts out.
Yeah, his body weight is not able to allow him, and he's very clearly struggling to take a step, let alone walk.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
when
willing
you
to
use the
lend a
word,
few olive
like when
branches to
someone
this
uses
film.
the word wound, it's usually that's something that's inflicted rather than something that's like that happens to you just naturally. Because God's Shin's evolution just naturally caused him to be the way he was, and through his adaptation, he changes. It's not like he collided with something or something happened that caused him to start bleeding from the gills, external his own physiology, as well
I'm
as
I'm curious if
Joey's here.
Hey, I'm here.
Hi.
All right.
What's up, everybody?
I'm curious, could we technically actually call it considering Godzilla origins because of creatures being transformed via nuclear waste? God,
You completely roboted there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like super hard.
Could it actually be considered wounded if the creatures themselves were being transformed due to outside means, thus the
Well, that's why you say
do
mutation,
think
not
that
wounded.
maybe, mutated.
fair.
Or we can just say that Shin Godzilla's incredibly fucked up.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so when it comes to Shin Godzilla, of what he
Also,
is,
just heads up, Joey. I do have to make the stream go along a little quickly because I do have work in a little bit, unexpectedly. So we're not going to go for too long.
okay. Well, I was about to say, when it comes to what Shin Godzilla is, it's never explicitly stated within the movie or source material because the whole goal there is kind of the whole point of mystery and ambiguity. Though there is hints of what he can be, but all that is left with subtlety, mainly because, well, Anno and Higuchi style, and also we don't really have a reason to know. It's kind of like with Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I've seen a lot of people complain how there's like multiple, quote unquote, multiple origins for Space Godzilla, but in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, they have no reason to know exactly how Space Godzilla was made and what the origins were. They were just speculating. So it makes sense they would kind of have to speculate between which time Godzilla's cells went up into space would lead to his creation. So it's kind of in that regard done so it's not feeling like the characters know something that they really shouldn't. And that's why I will give praise to how Space Godzilla is handled, while some people like to treat that as a flaw when it's like, it's only natural that there will be like speculations rather than a hard truth that'll just pulled out of the ass.
Yeah, well, in the case of Space Godzilla, I've never had a problem with that because they specifically show cells of Godzilla, cells of the space monster. Therefore, they can conclude, based on similar makeup, that the two are related. And considering the fact that in universe they know Godzilla was mutated, became Godzilla, and they've already seen one other monster mutate and become a new creature, that it's possible that Space Godzilla is a product of Godzilla, and since it comes from space, they'd have to wonder where could a Godzilla anything have ended up in space, and since they do know there's two known examples.
Technically two monsters by this point, Biollante and Ghidorah.
Yeah, but when people are like
Ghidorah, but specifically, I mean like anything Godzilla related, because Ghidorah doesn't have any Godzilla's DNA. So
but like a very similar thing happened with Ghidorah, so it's not. So is it not possible that something like this could have happened with others? And obviously, Biollante.
No, it definitely, yeah, no. I'm saying it definitely could happen with others. But I mean specifically being like they found something that's related to Godzilla, but it came from space, and then they'd have to draw their steps back in terms of like where that could have happened. So I understand what you're saying.
Because a lot of people kind of like I always hated that criticism because a lot of people always seen it as like, oh, their Space Godzilla has two origins. It's like, no, those aren't two origins, you moron. That's two theories.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, like I would say like the whole Biollante theory, just like what shouldn't really is kind of redundant because the whole thing of like, well, considering that Mothra is kind of like an element in Space Godzilla, like the theory that G cells from Mothra like floated off her and into space to create Space Godzilla should have just been like the theory that they would have stuck with, especially considering that the Shobijin, the twin fairies, kind of like show up to Miki anyways. Because at this point, like when you consider like the time travel bullshit that happens in King Ghidorah, it just makes it even more confusing. Like, wait, so did Biollante still happen or not?
That's what I was about to say. Like, if you actually stop and think about the timeline, Biollante probably shouldn't have existed by this point. Or if
No.
she
Well,
did,
that's
maybe-
the King
or
Ghidorah
if
thing
she
is a
did, it
big
would've been
rap.
King Ghidorah.
Well, the problem with the King Ghidorah thing is that in universe, the Godzillasaurus, or at least what they tried to do, at least the intent behind it, was that moving the Godzillasaurus created the 84 Godzilla, and then the 84
Guys,
Godzilla is what mutated further. Yes,
I,
Lo?
I'm really sorry, but like going back to Shin Godzilla, have you seen the rumors of the supposed sequel? Do you know where this is coming from?
Bullshit.
It's bullshit.
It's always
Okay.
that's something everyone has always said. Like ever since Shin came out and it was really successful, everyone thought there was going to be a sequel, and then there was the whole thing about the world of Godzilla, which I believe, at least as far as I remember brushing up on the information, they weren't planning on doing like a Godzilla cinematic universe, but rather these were the early plans to continue to spread out the Godzilla IP, which is what we're seeing now with like more of their plans and stuff, with like the ride attractions, further pushes into the US, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when
Well,
minus
yeah.
one
Okay.
happened,
And also, when it comes to that whole thing, it's like personally, I don't want a Shin Godzilla sequel, as it wasn't real. Like some people thought that was sequel bait. Same with minus one. Neither one was sequel bait. They were made with the intention, including minus one, of ambiguity where a sequel can be done. But Hideaki Anno even said himself that he's not really interested. Same with Shinji Higuchi. Both of them said they are not interested in doing a sequel to Shin Godzilla, and that wasn't their intent with the ending. And when you know anything about like previous works by Anno in particular, like that is a aesthetic of his to go with ambiguity, abstract storytelling, and all of that. That's why the end of Evangelion's the first show, like a lot of people were mad about the ending when it first came out because it didn't have the typical climax, and Anno was given a lot of death threats. So then he made the movie End of Evangelion as basically a big message of telling anime fans to go and touch some fucking grass. And that's literally the message.
Yeah.
Which he is right. Anime fans do need to go touch some fucking grass.
where Gurren Lagann was, get in the fucking mech, we're gonna kill God.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we're gonna kill the devil who thinks he's God.
Yeah. But it's like, yeah, that ending wasn't building up for a sequel, and people who still say it is, it's like, they need to watch more Anno works to kind of get an understanding of what he was doing there, or even just look up his demand statements. Like, he doesn't even like answering questions unless he really doesn't like a theory, or unless he's trying to get the point across. Like, if it's a message he wants you to know, like, go the fuck outside, he'll tell you. If it's a theory he hates, he'll say, no, that's not what I was going for. But overall, he'll speak in very subtle terms. Yamazaki was doing that for a while with minus one's ending, but I think after a while, Yamazaki realized a sequel was going to happen, so he just decided to come in and spill out what he was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that cooks. Please, Yamazaki, please be good.
No, I'm just like, for me, I'm sorry. Like, I want to move back to the video, but one thing I have to say about that is like, Yamazaki, just take the time you need. Don't feel rushed. This isn't the Millennium Era. This isn't the Showa era, and it isn't the Heisei era. You do not need to make another film as quickly as possible.
The West has your back. Good or bad movies, we don't care. We've got your back. We can keep the fans sedated. Just cook.
Yep. Yeah, it's great. Like I said, that we're getting a minus one sequel. As like I said, it looked like the Reiwa was going to be another Millennium, which the Millennium fucking killed the franchise for a while because it didn't have like a consistent return of characters and all that people liked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why
keep going
the way that it was. Good movie and all.
Yeah.
15 million and made 79 million worldwide, making it the #1 selling Japanese film from 2016. However, it received mixed reviews in the US and actually flopped in US cinemas, which is why not that many people seem to be talking about it.
Yeah, because the film was not easy to find.
Yeah, like here's the thing. Like here's the thing. He's comparing this with stuff like minus one. Shin Godzilla actually did fine for what you'd expect from a traditional Japanese movie, because Japanese movies, they get released in very limited theaters traditionally. My theater used to rarely get Japanese movies, and it's starting to slowly get more over time, but my theater originally didn't have Shin Godzilla. My theater didn't have like Shin Ultraman for a while, and it didn't have Shin Kamen Rider for a while. But now that Japanese media is getting bigger in the West, more demand is coming for it, so they decided to bring Shin Kamen Rider and Shin Ultraman to my theater. Godzilla minus one kind of opened that can of worms up more to get can of worms isn't the word I'm looking for, but whatever. Kind of opened that stage more for more people to come into Japanese media. So no, it didn't do bad. It just performed like any other foreign film usually does. -1 did impressive for anything that wasn't made in English language.
Yeah, and
this is under the
You're
exact same
roboting.
circumstances. This was under the exact same circumstances as what about Return of Godzilla.
You're about to do it
Yes,
again. So
yes,
it's
this
really
was going to
funny.
happen. That film was and still is not easy to find. Bless you, Criterion. But
Yeah.
That's why that film isn't talked about as much. Shin Godzilla barely had a theatrical release outside of Japan.
Yeah.
And, like, I said it myself. Again, speaking, it took me over a year to find the thing. It took me almost a year to watch the thing. And it was on a plane.
Yeah. I watched it on a plane too through the Amazon Fire Stick.
Yeah. Return to Catch like on a TV show.
Beep boop beep.
I'm sorry, Minecraft, but I don't understand Clanker.
TV showing. Thank you. Pardon the robot.
Hey, look, the toaster thinks it has rice.
Like, basically,
When the hamster stops running, it turns off.
but yeah, like this is kind of the logic that fucking moron Grace Randolph was using on Monsterverse versus -1 of the monster -1. Japan needs to realize that people want the monsters. GXK is beating -1 when it's like no, even in -1's extremely successful case with how it was released, it still was limited and it still was in a language most people in the West cannot speak. So yeah, that is why. If -1 had a full release, it wouldn't actually, given how popular it was, I actually think it probably would have outbeat Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, even in its language.
I would argue, well, maybe not outbeat, but likely compared to it.
Yeah.
Significantly.
Honestly, I do
We'll have
have
Lao
to say
say
that.
the last statement before we move forward again.
Okay, so in Spanish, the dub is really good in both Latin American and Spanish from Europe. So, like, what I think that they should do next time is just make the dubs and then release the movie everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they should do.
Dubs are
I know my
gay.
initial viewing experience was benefited from not knowing anything about this movie, so take with that what you will. The first thing that really shocked me when I watched Shin Godzilla was its tone. I'd actually just come off of watching -1, which is a very dramatic and serious in tone movie. So initially with this movie, I was caught off guard when we first see Godzilla. I mean, his appearance is absolutely ridiculous. His eyes are popping out of his head. He's all deformed and just creating this goofy face. His tail and everything, it just has these grotesque movements to it. And I was like, what is this? And then because he's wounded, he literally is just dropping blood. I mean, this movie is gory right out of the gate. Like, he has all these cuts in his side, and he's just spewing blood out onto the streets of Tokyo, and it's
Those aren't
absolutely
cuts, they're
over the
stretch
top.
marks.
This is horrific.
No, not even stretch marks. They're just gills. Like,
Yeah,
it's
and I
just,
also want to say the whole the eyes and stuff. I don't agree with the summary of them being goofy. They're fish-like. Like, yeah, they're gonna be googly. It's like that's the point.
Giant-
It does.
James
It
Roll
does-
compared it to the giant claw, and he's right.
Yeah, and there's like two.
But it
There's like
doesn't take away from the fact that it does look goofy because googly eyes are related to goofiness. So, like, even if it's realistic, it's
They
still kind
are-
of goofy.
They are, but I feel like goofiness like implies like a level of unrealism, stupid, and things like that. When it's like it does two things. I think it's like paying tribute to like the old suits, while also rationalizing it in the narrative by having it be fish-like. So
See,
it
I
like
think
kind of does two
Monocutie
things
is
there.
Yeah,
I think Monocutie
okay,
is
okay.
cute.
like at worst, I would say that the eyes and his mannerisms are unintentionally goofy because like I don't think he intended Godzilla to look silly when he came ashore. I think
Right.
Otto's intent was always for Godzilla to look like deformed and just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like
Well, I
maybe
mean,
like the first shot that we see of him where he's like facing the camera, like that probably may have been what caused me to go like, wow, that was goofy.
Yes.
But like
I
every
think
other
it's
shot, I mean, for what they're going for, every other shot in the film aside from that, he looks fine, design wise.
Yeah,
for what they
it's
were
also
going
kind of
for.
cute.
Like
Yeah.
even like behavior wise, even though like I think it's less like overtly predatory, like he's kind of similar to the host in how it's moving around in terms of like big back legs and very serpentine body, but unlike the host's design, which is overtly far more grotesque in appearance, Shin looks like recognizable but just kind of off. And again,
Yeah.
with like features like the googly eyes, I can understand people thinking he looks goofy, but it's stripping all that back. I don't really understand like the perspective that like the intent, or at least what he think was the intent, was it for it to be goofy.
Yeah,
I have
I
to
mean,
ask,
like,
I'd have to ask you in particular, how would you define goofiness? Because why I'm saying it's not goofy is one, again, it looks like a fish. Like, I don't think fishes are goofy in particular. And two, like I said, and why this works with the intended narrative within the film is that he's, once again, like he's just crawling on land, tripping over himself, has trouble lifting his own body weight. I wouldn't consider that goofy. I'd say that that portrays exactly what he's going for, and not even subtly. I don't even think that, as much as abstract elements are in that film, that's not one of them. That's pretty clear cut, I think.
Well, so you're the first thing you said was that I don't consider fish goofy. I would say the different strokes for different folks. I've seen plenty of fish that look very, very goofy, and I've seen fish
Yeah.
before things like flopping
Goofy
on
as
land. That,
hell.
although in the context, like a fish is probably gasping for air because it's on land, but how it acts and the context around it will make action like that appear goofy. Like I can
Yeah.
understand how like what the intention of the scene is while also acknowledging people saying that the scene does look goofy. So I'd say
Okay.
that those are not mutually exclusive.
Okay,
Yeah,
but I'll
I mean,
say that.
literally
But I
just
will.
sent.
Okay, so I
Last
will
statement.
concede on that, but I don't think someone could say it like it doesn't work in an objective sense. I will say in that degree.
I'm also not saying
right.
that.
I mean,
That's the other thing.
right. I mean, like, I don't particularly care for Shin's design in the film. You know, like really any of the designs, quite frankly, they're just not my cup of tea. But I can at least understand, you know, what the intent is objectively, and be like, all right, it's fine for what it, you know. It does kind of more or less get the job done of having a sea creature that's just mutating into this monstrosity, if you will.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can respect that.
Yeah. Okay.
Terrific. So right away, it's got this really grotesque goofiness to it, and then the characters come across really serious. And as it's going on, you realize that this is actually kind of a comedy. And the movie has this just fast pace and really humorous tone to its edit that I really appreciated. It had me actually laughing a lot consistently throughout the movie. So of course, Godzilla, you know, he eventually makes it across the city. He recharges and he comes back regenerated, and he looks a lot more appealing at this point of the story. And I do love the design of Godzilla. He has that classic Godzilla man in a suit type of feel, but of course it's CG now. But I love that type of just slow moving big monster type of look. I just think it's fun, and that's one of my favorite things about Japanese Godzilla movies. This movie is shot so well. Its cinematography is fantastic, and there's so many scenes where you're underneath Godzilla and you're with the people, and it really creates this horror type of feel to the movie. And I think that this is probably the closest out of any Godzilla movie I've seen that has actually felt like a horror movie, but it really just feels like
Wait. Pause it. Shin Godzilla is indeed cosmic horror, but are you saying it's the first Godzilla movie to be horror? Like, the original, dude! And then you have Godzilla vs. Hedorah might be a fucking kid's movie, but it's also horror. Like, you have all this weird, surreal imagery showing up, dark scenes, people dying in horrific ways. That is a children's horror movie versus Hedorah is. And Gojira is 100% a horror film.
It is, like, granted, well, okay, Shin is described as a horror movie. I was about to say the film thematic. The film fails with the humans, with the civilian stuff for multiple reasons, but we'll get to that with the Shin debate.
I mean, a couple things. I mean, he did say earlier that he's only seen a few Godzilla movies, so who knows? Like, and he didn't really specify too many examples of like the few Godzilla movies that he has watched up to this point. But that being said, there's plenty of Godzilla movies that go for like the horror element, like Gojira 54. Some moments in Hedorah. You know, there's also Biollante as well. There's some moments of horror there. And even Destroya kind of has like an Aliens vibe, and Aliens kind of it has like the horror vibe as well when the Marines get attacked by the Xenomorphs. You know, same thing applies to when the SWAT team kind of get attacked by the Destroya. And there's some other examples as well that I'm sure you could pull. That's just to name a couple.
Well, here's the
I think
problem I
what
have.
he's trying to say maybe simply that he just wasn't scared by 54, which honestly, like, is 100% understandable that someone watches an old movie and doesn't get scared.
Well, then
That
I would
happens all the time.
still say, like, for example, like in that case, then we then say that older films that aren't able to scare people anymore aren't horror films. Like I'd say, like
and by that
if the
result,
intent is to build a horror
Like,
film, but you're not scared
with
by it now, like
That's
I
a
would say
Joseph
that
Anderson
some do
argument.
count as that.
again,
I
like
would say, for
we
example, Phantom of the Opera used to be a horror film. It also had some other stuff, but it used to be horror, and I don't think it's holds up as horror. At least to me, it doesn't.
yeah,
here's what I'd
I
say.
understand. Before you say anything, I was gonna say, like, my sentiment for that. I understand what you're saying. I would say that, like, the idea there makes sense in that there are many old films that were intended to be horror films that no longer scare. I would still say they are classed as horror films, but then the question moves away from I wasn't scared by this horror film to now why is it in the modern day these elements don't work as a horror film, and then compare even to like other films from a similar time that still in some way or shape hold up as being horror films. We're gonna have one last person say something and then we're gonna keep moving forward again.
Okay, another problem I have with his statement is he's seen -1. That's partially a horror film. You have some very dark, eerie music by Sato-san. You have the fucking boat scene where it has that music, the tension that Godzilla can fucking kill these people who are stranded alone off in the ocean on a boat. You have the eerie atmosphere that played after Godzilla just blew up the entire fucking city of Tokyo. Well, not Tokyo, Giza. And then yeah, Ginza.
Yeah.
It is a horror film. He's seen a horror Godzilla movie. It's just or the first part of the film when Godzilla's going around in the dark, biting people, killing them, throwing them around, showing how helpless the military is. That's horror. That was Jurassic Park shit there.
Yeah, the Oda Island sequence is a horror scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I
Shin
think maybe
Godzilla
he
is
just means
cosmic horror.
gore by
Shin
horror.
Godzilla is cosmic horror, like what H.P. Lovecraft made.
Again, that'll be something for another stream, but
Well,
yeah.
Let's wait until you and Kuru have your battle on it.
But -1 is like what the original is, a tragic disaster horror film. That's what -1 is.
Yeah.
It's still a horror movie. It's just a different flavor of horror. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Also, I was gonna
Beep,
say,
boop, beep.
how is this funny? But also maybe different sense of humor, and also Shin is a satire, so it's supposed to be comedic. But generally, okay.
Let's keep going.
Punches, you feel the fear when Godzilla is traveling through the cities. Now, when it comes to all of the characters that are kind of scrambling around to try to protect Tokyo and Japan from Godzilla, one of the biggest criticisms I found online was that they felt there was just too many of these scenes and it was too convoluted and all over the place. I actually found this to be one of the most interesting and exciting parts of the movie. It really gives off this vibe that it's more of a political satire than it is like a sincere story. And so the involvement of all of these different government officials, they're so overly concerned with their perception that they're just making mistakes constantly. How inept the government was responding and the different people and chain of commands. There's definitely a satirical undercurrent to all of it that I found frankly hilarious. It was very comical and I found myself laughing through it. I thought it was fun. That being said, I still felt this movie had a depth and sincerity with its heroes. And I think it's because it shows the vulnerabilities of them being kind of fumbling, bumbling characters early on that you learn to care for them and see them overcome their flaws, and it gets you a little bit more invested in the later parts of the movie. But yeah, when I saw that the budget of this was only 15 million, and you look at a movie like Godzilla X Kong, which is upwards of 150 mil, you just think like this gives that classic Jurassic Park type of thing where you only need to see the creature so many times. In fact, I still feel like you get to see Godzilla a lot in this movie, by the way. But when you put creators in a budgetary constraint box a little bit, you have to be more creative with how you show Godzilla, what shots you can use, what angles, and it just feels like this, along with Godzilla -1, all of the shots almost feel better than the US shots. You know, it doesn't have this huge glossy CGI sheen over the whole thing. It's very grounded and real and gritty feeling, and then there's select few.
By that point, I just say it's apples and oranges. Because the U.S., we're all critical of the MonsterVerse, but here's the thing. And when it comes to how they're shot, they're going for different things, like the sense of scale and New Empire. A lot of people critique, for example. The whole point is not to show the size of the monsters in New Empire, but like display how big the fucking Hollow Earth is. That's what I got, especially since you have parts in the city where Godzilla is shot in a way that does show his size. The point is to show how big the Hollow Earth is.
Yeah, it's more like comparing a zombie to a werewolf and saying, dude, like the zombie walks so slowly, it was like threatening, it was like really tense. And it's like, yeah, no, like, of course the werewolf wasn't doing that because it was like tearing people apart. You know, like it's different types of creatures. And the way you use them.
It depends on which zombie you kind of go for.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
but
like I
like
don't
the
think it's
imagery is the point with Shin Godzilla, even because I will say that his personality and objectives don't exist. It's just the image of a monster. As Omniviewer said many times, it doesn't even need to be G. It could be literally anything because it has no behavior. Basically,
That's why.
it's just a
Well,
walking monster.
That's part of why I
well,
say
one
Project Nemesis did it better.
one
'Cause-
thing I also noticed too, what he said was that it's weird that he said that he didn't think the story like was all that sincere because he realized the characters had a more satirical edge to them, and I think he's maybe comparing that to how -1 really isn't as satirical. But I think that like you can still have a satire with like a sincere story because even like how he's characterizing some of the characters, he doesn't really name any names. So I'm not even sure which characters he's referring to. But like,
something
for
like
example, the prime minister is satirical in terms of being a type of leader who essentially defers to his cabinet and the chain of command, as well as sort of like the protocol that comes with being a leader in a time of crisis rather than taking action like Rando does. But like again, I think that like this analysis, or at least the things that he's talking about, kind of fails because of a lack of specificity.
just because
Here's what I'd say. I think the core. You go on
Sorry.
Minecraft.
just because
You
you're
are Minecraft. I
Beep
let
boop
you
beep
speak, and
clanker.
then you go robot on me.
It's incredibly sincere, but it's also one of the funniest pieces of
Oh, there's a hamster somewhere.
So like
I let
Who
you.
has a hamster?
I let you speak, and you go robot on me. What the fuck, dude?
And then hamster or guinea pig somewhere.
It was a guinea
what I
pig.
was talking about next. Gurren Lagann is one of the funniest pieces of media I've ever seen in recent memory, and it's also incredibly sincere.
Here's what I'd say in terms of the Shin Godzilla and -1 comparison. Here's what I think. Like there's two sides of this debate. It's Shin Godzilla fans and -1 fans arguing with you. I think they're fucking stupid because yeah, they're both retellings of the first movie, but they're very, very different. They're apples and oranges. And Yamazaki said this himself. Like Yamazaki actually said in an interview, he went out of his way. While he would take some inspiration from Shin Godzilla, it's one of his favorites. He said he went out of his way to not be like Shin Godzilla, especially in the character sense. Because, like he said, for example, Shin Godzilla's point wasn't to be like very in depth and personal. It was to capture the idea of cogs in the machine, people at their work, having a documentary feel. Yamazaki said to avoid being accused of ripping off Shin Godzilla, he would went the opposite of that direction and went for a personal story. They're apples and oranges, and that was the point Yamazaki was going for. He did that intentionally. So it's like comparing them is stupid. It's like what I was saying about him praising Shin cinematography over the MonsterVerses. Shin cinematography and the MonsterVerses cinematography, the point of them is entirely different.
Well, I mean, you put a couple things here. First, I definitely wish that he would be a little more specific about like why Shin's story is insincere. Because, like, I mean, because I could definitely say that there's things that you can say that are wrong with Shin's story, but to say it's insincere is it's too vague of a concept unless you have like some examples. And the second thing, and this is a little less serious. Comparing Shin and -1 isn't so much apples and oranges. It's more like comparing a bag of poop to Jesus on a plate.
But, let's keep going, guys.
We'll have that debate one day.
And I just love that so much more. It looks so much better. There has always been a deeper thematic layer to the Japanese Godzilla films, and that started with the 1954 Godzilla movie, it being conceived as a metaphor for Hiroshima and the dangers of nuclear weapons. And with this movie, it continues a similar spirit. It was crafted in the wake of recent disasters, such as the Fukushima nuclear disaster and the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. So this film can, in a way, be seen as a direct reflection to how its government reacted in real time to those disasters. And
no, it cannot be seen. It objectively is. That's what it was aiming to be.
To those disasters. And a lot of this film's plot revolves around its boardroom heads being unable to act decisively, being resistant to evacuation strategies, or overly concerned with public perception or world perception. And all of this starts to result in a downfall of crisis management. However, it does properly create a strong theme of people needing to come together, work at overcoming their differences, put public image and procedure aside, and figure out how to band together and survive this Godzilla attack. In my opinion, this film is fantastic. It's grand, it's funny, it's scary, and it has a thoughtful message. This is the framework for which a great genre film should be created. And if you haven't seen Shin Godzilla, you should go watch it whether you're a Godzilla fan or not. It's an absolute masterclass of monster filmmaking. And I'm so grateful that my son got me into Godzilla and that we were able to watch this together. By the way, he's 17, so if you're worried about the gore, yeah, this is definitely like the most R-rated Godzilla movie I've ever seen. Anyway.
I would not say that this film is overtly gory.
It's not. It's bloody. Yeah. I think people like mix blood up with gore. Like you look at video game ratings, you have like immature on the back. Sometimes they'll just say blood, but then you have like blood and gore. They're not
Yeah,
the same thing.
But I
Yeah,
would even
Shin
say like
Godzilla is
I would
not-
say
we're not
Minus
talk-
has more overt like gore to it than
Yeah,
than
literally
Shin
his
does.
head blew up, and then we
Space-
saw, like
No,
the
no,
insides,
Hedorah-
and
But even
his
then-
eyes also
Hedorah is
were.
also very explicitly more gory just due to the nature of Hedorah himself.
Yeah,
So,
and
like-
even then,
Yeah.
but even then, like Godzilla -1 and Shin Godzilla, like we're not like to say, yeah, there's blood in them and there's some gruesome bits here and there, but they're not. Neither of them go full Evil Dead on you, pretty much. Like we're not
Yeah.
talking about
I
that.
think that's what he meant when he said horror before, like the superficial imagery of it. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
but
this
that,
one
like,
has like a
that's-
lot of blood.
Like I would say like the gore in Shin Godzilla is probably comparable, if not more tame than what we see in like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, where we see like the spacemen's blood squirting out of their faces, them getting choked to death, or
Yeah.
even Godzilla's blood and that being more overtly, I would say,
about the equivalent of-
gruesome, quote unquote.
Show them Ultra 7. You
I would
want
say
some
about
gory
the equivalent
kaiju
of-
stuff.
Joey, let me speak, please. Joey, let me
Oh, sorry.
speak. I'd say it'd be about the same, comparably to versus Destroyer or versus Gigan.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Maybe a little more than that.
But
I'd say it's a little more than versus Destroya, but the versus Gigan point you might be on the money with. But versus Destroya, like we mostly get to the part where like Destroya's like pieces are being blown off of him. On Shin Godzilla, you literally have blood pouring on the ground and all that. I'd say you're right on the money with versus Gigan, but I'd argue Shin is still more gory than versus Destroya. But like I said, if you want something like real gory, turn on Ultra 7. Like you literally have 7 like using the boomerang like thing on his head, cutting off like Ella King's fucking head, and blood and its insides start pouring out on the ground.
Ew.
Or
How many
Gamera.
brutal
Christ.
Ultraman kills are there?
Huh?
yeah.
This is rhetorical, by the way. How many
Yeah.
brutal kills are there in the franchise period?
Jesus.
There's a lot.
Like, wait, that's what happens.
24.
Yeah, Ultra 7's violent.
Yeah.
Ultraman
definitely.
period is violent.
Jack is
Well,
violent
Gamera,
too, Taro
like
is
Showa
yeah.
Gamera.
Showa Gamera
Oh,
too.
yeah, Gamera. Gamera period. Just like, Jesus. That man
Yeah,
is not
I'd argue 7 is the most violent of all the things we mentioned.
I was surprised by how gruesome Gamma Rebirth was when I was watching. I mean, like you have like that little Gauss with like glass in his eye. Like I was like, God damn! Like
No, that's
It's
what-
just
that's what
being
made that
it's being
joke.
faithful. It's being faithful, simple as.
Oh, very much.
But
It's so faithful.
yeah, I do have to end off the stream because job number 1 is
Alright.
calling me. This might be the shortest Zimcast we've ever done. We've
Jesus
done a
Christ.
non-long man.
1 hour is the shortest you've ever done.
Well,
No.
look at it this way: we finally
Zim,
did
Zim.
a Galaxy Nerd Outpost sized Zimcast.
Zim.
It's Galactic.
Company
First of all,
Productive was shorter than this. The YouTube version.
first
Hey,
of all,
Joey, how does it feel? What's it called? I won't let you feel I'm too ashamed anymore about the size. Okay.
fuck off. First of all, you pronounce it wrong. It's Galactic Nerd Outpost, not Galaxy Nerd Outpost.
Space Weeb Station. Yeah, so I thank you all for coming on. As you're looking here, you can find at least me on DeviantArt, Instagram, Twitter. If you're being super generous, become a patron. I multi-stream to Twitch, so those streams end up for a little bit on there, and then they sort of bounce off. So if you want all the vlogs or like the and like the videos again to watch, just look at them here on YouTube, which is probably where you're watching from. I've seen BitChute. I try to upload those or like redo the re-uploads as much as I can, just so there's a third party in case something would ever happen to the channel. Although I'm pretty confident that nothing will happen, but you never know. And I'm going to start working on this again. Kaiju Quarantine, my novella, I'm working on that right now. So some commentary videos, exclusive videos of different kinds, chapter segments, and more will be on there. So if you're being super generous, become a patron, and that will let you see early access to those videos. And you can become a patron for other reasons as well. But yeah, Tiny Zimcast, guys.
Yeah.
Go listen to Epic the Musical and Hades Town. They're both really good. I was going to have a segment about them, but I think Zim wants to close it out now.
Unfortunately, I have to. But
Thank you guys for having me on. It was a pleasure talking to you all again.
Yeah.
as always.
Also,
And for anyone who has been watching all the way to the end here, I'll be doing a poll tomorrow for Zimcast 98. as that will not be on Godzilla 98 because I'm not that unoriginal. It will be either the Shin debates will finally happen, or we'll be doing another kaiju commentary that we haven't done in a while, and it's on the many designs of Rodan. So people will be able to upload their Rodan designs, and we'll be able to talk about whether a Rodan design works or does not work. As I continue to work on the What Makes a Rodan a Well-Designed Kaiju video, which will serve as a companion piece to that stream when it happens.
Yeah, and I have my own debate that's going to be coming on soon, which is going to be I'm just going to be moderating it. Blackaroonie, Sea Monster, Minecraft World, and Kaiju Kuru are going to be arguing over Superman, and I'm going to be the coach to kind of stop them from spurging at each other. So look forward to that. And I also have a Doom. I actually am going to be reviewing finally reviewing Doom the Dark Ages with Jinrai Prime, Zach Cole on Galactic Nerd Outpost, actually on the weekend.
Yeah, and I'll just do a quick plug of mine. This Saturday, I'll be hosting a stream on Jaws to commemorate its 50-year anniversary.
Sounds fun.
There you go. Awesome,
Yay.
awesome. Anyone else got any other things they want to shell out before I close this?
I
not really.
am slowly working on a Gamera anniversary piece, and I haven't really been working on the Nemesis essay recently, just because I have been in the mood for other monsters and other topics. But the Gamera one, I want to have finished by October and then released day of. So, yeah. If you've seen that Ballad of Godzilla anniversary piece that one person did, I think 2 years ago, it's going to be very similar to that. So
there we go. Awesome, awesome. Again, thank you guys all for being on. Thank you to the audience for coming, despite the fact that I moved this stream 2 different times and kept switching the hours. But thank you guys once again. Be awesome. And remember,
Semper Fi, motherfucker.